I'm Mayk. Welcome to Battleground Politics. We are now in the final stretch before primary election day in Pennsylvania. On Tuesday, voters will decide who will be on the ballot in our area this fall when control of the U.S. Congress will be up for grabs. I talked to the Secretary of the Commonwealth, Al Schmidt, as he and election officials across Pennsylvania get ready for the primary. So before we talk about elections, I want to ask you about something that happened this past week, the arrest of a man charged with making threats against a number of Pennsylvania lawmakers. And we've unfortunately seen disturbing incidents of political violence in recent years. I know you yourself have had to deal with threats. And I just wanted to know, what were your thoughts as this latest situation unfolded? And have you talked to any of the lawmakers who were affected?
I haven't spoken to any of the lawmakers that were affected. It is obviously very concerning. And as you know, and as you referenced, this is happening all too frequently and really has no place in our system of government or our way of doing things. So it's an incredible concern. And I know on the election front, we have an election threat task force designed for information sharing related to threats concerning elections, voters, polling places, election administrators, anything else like that, to make sure that we're prepared should any of that come our way.
Yeah, how has that work changed given the political violence that we've seen in Pennsylvania and Washington and elsewhere? And have you had to step anything up, essentially?
Yeah, it's really changed significantly, certainly in the course of my career being involved with elections. No one goes into election administration expecting to have to deal with any of those things. Certainly their families are not going into it expecting to be dealing with those sorts of things. And that's why, at least in the Shapiro administration, it was important for us to be prepared and to set up a task force so that if there are threats related to elections, we can share information in real time and make sure everybody knows what everybody else's role is so that we're all prepared and nothing gets in the way of voters casting their vote and making their voice heard.
Is there anything new for this midterm year that voters or poll workers should be prepared for or expect to see as a result of that?
Voters should expect for a free, fair, safe and secure election. And I know we just talked about threats, but Lauren, it's so important that we not be distracted by any of that ugliness or any of that noise. When voters go to vote on election day, if they choose to vote in person, they should have absolute confidence that they can cast their vote and, as I said, make their voice heard. If they choose to vote by mail, and by the way, election day is closing in. It's on Tuesday, May 19th. So if they have their mail-in ballot, they should return it to their Board of Elections office or to a drop box in their county if one is available.
You just skipped right ahead of me, Mr. Secretary. I was going to ask you what you want voters to know, but there you had it. And let's dig into some of the things that you've been working on. I had commissioners from Chester County on the show last week to talk about the poll book error that happened last year and their preparations for this primary and some of the changes that they have made to make things run smoother. And I know that they were in contact with your office also as well when that happened last year. So have you made any changes at the state level as a result of what happened in Chester County last year?
Yeah, unfortunately, what Chester County experienced was a county level error that was a significant one. So what we are always looking to do is we oversee elections, but more importantly, we provide support to our counties to make sure that we make training available. And at the beginning of the Shapiro administration, we set up a training team led by an experienced county election administrator to make training available to county level people involved with election administration so they have access to all the information that they need. But fundamentally, at the end of the day, elections in Pennsylvania are really run at the county level, all with the same election code, all within the confines of the same law, but it's really a county level operation. So we want to be as supportive of them as we possibly can be.
I know that there is some technology that you've been working on, some electronic poll books that can connect to the internet. I understand that is not happening, though, this midterm or this primary. That my understanding is that could potentially fix an issue quicker if it does come up. What is the thinking in not deploying that right now, and what's the plan for it?
Yeah, electronic poll books are an incredible advancement. Many dozens of our counties now have election poll books, including Philadelphia, that allows voters when they arrive to check in more quickly, or if the files need to be updated, they can be updated more quickly. What we did was we had announced a pilot, but we had so few counties looking to do it just yet, and we didn't want it to just be Philadelphia specific, that we've postponed that pilot to see if we can get more interest in doing these sorts of things.
Okay. There has obviously been a lot of talk about elections, not just here in Pennsylvania, but across the country recently. President Trump executive order from this spring, if that is implemented, it would result in changes in the administration of elections. And I know there have been lawsuits since then. What's the last communication that you got from the federal government regarding voting?
Yes, well, the president doesn't run elections in the United States, and the Secretary of State doesn't run elections in Pennsylvania. Our laws govern everything that we do. And the federal government and Department of Justice sent a letter asking Pennsylvania to provide sensitive information on our 8.8 million registered voters. That includes Social Security numbers, that includes driver's license numbers, and all the rest. And we declined to do so. And we declined to do so because our laws don't allow us to provide that information to begin with. And obviously there are security concerns with that as well. But fundamentally, at the end of the day, even if we wanted to, we couldn't. And that's our position. So far, many other states, red and blue alike, have also declined that demand from the Department of Justice. And I think we're up to 5 or 6 federal court decisions so far upholding states in their position in not providing that information to the federal government.
The Treasury Secretary who's running for governor, I asked her about this recently, and she said she would hand that information over. And I wonder, given that there is an election coming up, we don't know what's happening, how does this larger effort, what does it mean for how you handle this information right now? Are you preparing for the possibility that the federal government might succeed legally, or that someone might come into office and say, yes, we're going to hand this over?
Well, I certainly can't speak in terms of the candidate for office that you mentioned. That's not my space.
Sure.
But what I can say is, ultimately, you know, everything we do is within the rule of law. And if courts determine one thing or another that is at odds with our interpretation of it, you know, we'll see where that goes. But so far, every court has decided or made decisions in support of states in rightfully declining to provide that information to the federal government.
Has it changed how you handle that information in general?
No, we safeguard it. We make sure that it is not distributed, obviously, because it involves such sensitive information like Social Security numbers, like driver's license numbers. So that's not something that we would, under any circumstances, betray. Our voters have the right to have their information safeguarded and protected. And I can think of no greater way to compromise election security or election integrity than making that information available in a fashion that could be compromised.
Okay. President Trump earlier this year expressed some regret at not directing the National Guard to seize voting machines in swing states after the 2020 election when you were here in Philadelphia. Are you prepared, and do you think counties are prepared in Pennsylvania if that were to happen in the future?
So the Pennsylvania Department of State, working with our counties, conduct tabletop exercises and all sorts of other things to prepare for Election Day and anything that could possibly interfere or get between voters who are registered to vote and casting their vote and making their voices heard. So we prepare for every possible scenario that might exist to make sure that nothing gets in the way of that.
I want to ask about mail-in ballots. One more thing on the, how the Trump administration is handling things, and then something that voters are running into here. In terms of the executive order and the from the White House, there has been some discussion about involvement of the post office in terms of determining where mail-in ballots go. Have you run into any issues at this point with the post office in terms of getting mail-in ballots where they are directed to go?
We have not in this primary, but please remember, an executive order is not the law. It is our laws that govern how elections are conducted in our country and in our commonwealth. So that executive order has no bearing on any of that whatsoever. In this primary, again, with Election Day on Tuesday, the 19th, if your viewers have their mail-in ballots and they choose to vote that way, they should make sure to return them without delay to their Board of Elections office or a drop box if it's available in their county.
And we are still seeing issues with ballots that don't have things like the secrecy envelope or the signature. And I know in Philadelphia, the city commissioners put out lists of hundreds of voters who have tried to vote or thought they voted and are still running into those issues, which raises the possibility that those votes don't get counted. What else do you think could be done to make sure that voters who thought they did what they were supposed to do have their votes counted?
Yeah, I think that's really an important thing, Lauren. And first of all, voting by mail is very simple and it is safe and secure. So if you follow the instructions, you won't have any issues whatsoever. The Department of State in the last couple of years worked with our counties to redesign the appearance of the outer envelope, it's called, the one that you sign and date and return your ballot in, and revise the instructions. And we've seen a really significant, as reported on by third parties and news organizations and others, we've seen a really significant decrease in the number of ballots that are rejected, even though that number to begin with was not a significant number. Every vote is precious, and we want to make sure that we do everything we can to make sure that if you were registered to vote and you cast your vote on or before Election Day, that it will be counted.
Is that something that you're still tracking and that you would consider making other changes to the envelope or just how you handle that potentially before November if you see an opportunity?
Yes, we track everything, and I am a technocrat by nature, and you can't manage what you don't measure. So what we do is we track return rates, we track rejection rates, we track all of that, and are confident that the changes that we've made working closely with our counties, both for mail ballots and also for what are called provisional ballots, if a voter shows up at a polling place where they're not registered to vote, the kind of like display that they're interfacing with minimizes opportunities for mistakes because we want every registered eligible voter's vote to be counted.
Let's stay on that technical technocrat issue that you mentioned, because there's been a lot of focus, especially with discussion of the SAVE Act in Washington, which has not been passed by Congress, but around the issue of voter registration and who is eligible to vote. On Pennsylvania's voter registration form, it asks you to check a box to say whether you're a citizen. And if you check no, it says you can't register to vote. And then it has a section where you're asked to declare and sign that you are a citizen. You've been one for 30 days before the election. It does not ask for documentation. Why not? Why not ask for verification? That is an issue that has gotten so much attention.
Well, as you know, cases of non-citizens voting, and you know I've worked on this issue for many years, for now since 2012, 2013. It's been some time. So it's an issue I am acutely aware of and can say with great conviction and without hesitation that it happens very infrequently. That being said, and through the motor voter system, voters are put on one path if you're a citizen, which allows you the opportunity to register to vote, or another path if you're not a citizen that does not provide the opportunity to register to vote. And there was just an audit from our Auditor General in Pennsylvania that in the hundreds of thousands of records that they audited, there was one case, it was caught in real time, and that non-citizen did not vote through that whole process. So there are safeguards in place at every step of the way, and you are, in fact, swearing and affirming under penalty of prosecution and obviously deportation that you're a citizen of the United States.
Is there a reason that you do it that way with the affirmation as opposed to saying you have to show a document?
Yeah, the law requires the affirmation, and it's important so that if a non-citizen would register to vote and vote, they would be held accountable for doing so. For us, working closely with the counties, this is not an issue that we've seen occurring with any great frequency whatsoever. But it is something that we take seriously. And when we have had cases, and we've worked closely with the federal government on this, including in this administration, that whenever they reach out to us to assist with investigations, we provide them with all of the information that they request. When we do have these cases, however infrequent, it should not undermine confidence in elections. It should add confidence or build confidence that when any election irregularities take place like this, they are and when warranted, prosecuted.
As we wrap up, we're in primary season. It brings up a lot of focus on the issue of parties, independent voters, whether people are willing to register as a Democrat or a Republican. And Pennsylvania's has closed primaries. I saw recently that Congressman Brian Fitzpatrick from Bucks County said, he would be registered as an independent, except that Pennsylvania has closed primaries. And you've shown quite a bit of independence over the years. And so I wondered if Pennsylvania's laws were different, would you do anything different? Would you rather be an independent if Pennsylvania had open primaries?
Well, when I first registered to vote in Pennsylvania, I was a registered independent before I registered Republican in, I think, 1994. So that is, when you look at like tracking voting patterns and voter registration patterns, we have seen, not just in Pennsylvania, but across the country, a significant interest in registering independent. And it is all the more remarkable in Pennsylvania with, as you described, a closed primary system, that we have that going on. But it is not difficult to change party affiliation. There's no like litmus test that you're required to take to register as a Democrat or Republican. So, and you can do so online and change your affiliation or whatever else. There's been a lot of legislation related to this issue, and that's, we'll see how that ultimately shakes out.
Yeah, it's been interesting to watch with I know that Pennsylvania does allow people to track how sort of the trends in registration because of the motor voter policy that Pennsylvania has now. So,
and with, as it relates to the motor voter registration process, we've seen almost an equal number of Democrats and Republicans and independents register to vote. It's almost an immaculate pie chart with 3 equal parts, and that's been pretty consistent. Sometimes it benefits Democrats a little bit more, or trends Democratic, sometimes it trends Republican, sometimes it trends independent. But the motor voter system is a very reliable one and doesn't benefit or disadvantage any party when it comes to voter registration.
Okay, all right. Secretary Schmidt, I appreciate your time. I will note that you did not actually answer my last question about whether or not you would be an independent if we had open primaries. But we can leave it there.
That is not a question I would answer, and also we're in litigation regarding that issue. So that's really not something I can speak to beyond what I said.
All right, we can leave it there. It was good to talk to you.
Okay.
Thank you so much for your time. Great to get the information about this upcoming primary, which is Tuesday, May 19th.
That's right. Thank you.
You can find more Battleground Politics on our website, NBC10.com, on our NBC Philadelphia YouTube page, or wherever you get your podcasts.